radiation during brain surgery is like providing better results because the surgeons are able to like monitor how the brain is functioning better while they're doing the surgery. So instead of like putting the patient completely to sleep, having them in this like conscious awareness, I guess, helps them like read the brain waves better and stuff.
That sounds scary. Does that scare anyone else? That scares me a little bit. Who are they? Have they tried this on a lot of people or?
I think it has been done before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right, Jack went away. Jack, what happened?
Am I here?
You're still here. There you are.
Yeah, I left the app.
Oh, okay. Kim, did that do anything to you?
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Oh, there you
Oh.
There you are. There you go.
Oh wait.
Oh, Mariel.
Wait, can you hit that again?
Oh, there we go. Got everyone now. Yay. All right. Jack, you had a one for us? Current event?
I do. Well, it's not really, it's kind of a fact.
Okay.
Apparently, obesity levels in the United States are leveling off now. After, like, in the 2015-2016, they did, like, a study, and it's becoming level, which is, I guess, good.
What do they think that's because of? Like, what's the reason? Did they say?
Give me a second. I can find it. Well, apparently it says the government has put in strategies, like they're trying to make healthy foods more accessible and not make them as expensive as they are right now because, you know, most of the obese people are not as wealthy and they can't afford all the organic food like that because it's so expensive.
Okay. Okay, so at your schools in the cafeteria, do you, like, if you get a school lunch, do you have to get, you know, a fruit, a vegetable in order for it to count as a school lunch?
No.
No.
No?
Just kind of buy whatever you want.
Okay, so private versus public. So, like, in public education, the kids have to have, you know, one fruit, one vegetable in order for it to be considered, get the school lunch price. And if they don't, then everything's a la carte, which then costs more. So, you know, when Michelle Obama kind of went with this healthy eating thing, they came down with this. And so at our school, the kids would take the apple because they didn't want to pay the extra price, but then all these apples just started going in the trash because kids would eat them. So it was interesting to see, like, you know, they're trying to do good, but then you're wasting all this food. So I don't know. It was interesting to see. But yeah, I know, like, they have had all this push for healthy eating and healthy habits. So nice to see that it's finally seeming to pay off. So interesting. Anyone else?
I have one.
Go for it.
Okay, so mine was a whole nother thing on gene, well, not really like gene editing, but like gene therapy. So there was a little boy, I think he was like 7 or something, and nearly like 80% of the skin on his body was like destroyed. So he had this condition called epidermolysis bullosa. And I think that's also, it's called like butterfly disease or whatever, if that rings a bell to anybody. And so it basically, it keeps the epidermis and the dermis from holding together. So, they were sure that he was going to die because all his skin was getting destroyed because it wasn't being like held down or whatever. So he was like losing his skin all the time, and it would rip really easy. And, of course that opens him up to other things like infection and all that kind of stuff. So then they started, they tried all these different therapies and like skin grafts from his dad and stuff, and none of them worked. And so they started, I guess like growing skin, kind of.
Okay.
So they started growing keratinocytes. Correct. Oh no, my light's cut off. Sorry. It's basically just the cells from the epithelium. And so they started growing those or whatever and making those into the skin grafts that he was using. And so that ended up working, and they had ended up, in separate operations fixing different parts of his body. And every time they would put him in like a 12-day coma so that the skin would stay still and would have the time to like heal, without being moved or, jostled, so that it would heal correctly and allow all the cells to attach. So
That sounds painful.
yeah.
But I mean, will it eventually hold?
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah,
or-
it ended up working really well, and he ended up I think they're getting ready to approve him and stuff for like school sports and all. So I don't know if this is so much, actually that's kind of like a weird kind of thought, is whether this is like a cure or kind of like management,
It's not
because
long term, it's more short term.
yeah, it's just like if it holds and it stays there and it works for the rest of his life, then I guess you could say that they found like a treatment, like a cure treatment. But if it doesn't, and like he has to keep going back and doing these things, and I guess nothing ever like changes, and it's more management. And also considering the fact that he is missing, those proteins that bind the epidermis to the dermis. So will that affect his like new skin?
Right. Well, and if he gets a scrape, how does that heal? And
Yeah, like if that
how
new
well it
skin
heals, yeah, be interesting. Weird. Okay, cool. Anyone else? Did everyone else forget?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Then, who would like to go first with their presentation?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Yeah, Bob can.
Give it a little audience there.
How do I do it? Do I just
Down at the bottom, there should be a share screen button. See that?
yeah,
You don't see it?
not
Oh, there you go.
no, I do. Is it working?
Yeah, it's working.
Perfect.
Okay. So I did my project on Planned Parenthood funding. First, I'm going to start with the video.
We broadcast to an international audience, and I think that people around the world would be very, very bemused and alarmed to know how much of policy in the United States revolves around abortion. Can you state for the record, Planned Parenthood does or doesn't provide abortions based on money it gets from the federal government?
Well, as you said, Christiane, the federal government in the U.S. does not provide funding for abortion services, hasn't for years. We think that's wrong, but that's the law. And so what we're talking about now, in fact, what Speaker Ryan said the other day, is now they're going to end access to Planned Parenthood preventive care. That means birth control services, cancer screenings, well woman visits. We provide health care to 2.5 million people every single year, and that health care is now at risk.
Cecile, this is so political and it's not really about thinking about people's health. Give me an idea. You've just said the issues that will be at risk. How many people, give me the stats of what you're able to achieve with Planned Parenthood.
Well, it's extraordinary. I mean, we've been around 100 years. We're the primary women's healthcare provider in the United States of America. And frankly, under Obamacare, one of the most popular benefits we fought for was birth control coverage for women. Now, 55 million women get it at no copay. That is at risk. But as a result of the work we've done, we're at a 30-year low for unintended pregnancy in America. And so the crazy thing is, Christiane, about this new effort to end that access to family planning at Planned Parenthood, it is the very thing that is reducing unintended pregnancy and the need for abortion in the United States. It's really a problem when politicians put their politics ahead of women's health care in America. And I can tell you, this is not what voters voted for. This is not even what Trump voters voted for. They are shocked to find out that this administration would consider ending access to Planned Parenthood.
You say that, and I was actually going to ask you because, 52% of white American women did vote for Donald Trump, 43% for Hillary Clinton. And politics, as you say, is being played with this. What do you think the result will be? What do you think the effect will be on women around the country? In other words, in terms of, will they fight back? What can they do? Is this really going to go through, do you think?
Well, absolutely, women are fighting back, not only women, but men as well. And as you know, there's a big march on Washington.
Okay, so that's like the gist of the Planned Parenthood part. So that was the president talking. So yeah. So I thought that was important because she talked about what Planned Parenthood actually does, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about it and what the funding is actually going towards, because I think when a lot of people think of Planned Parenthood, they think of abortions because that's what the main controversy is, or one of the biggest controversies is with the whole organization. So I'll talk more about that. But so Planned Parenthood is a nonprofit and it provides women's and reproductive health care. So they do more than just abortions. They do a lot more than that. They do sex education, and they're preventing 579,000 unintended pregnancies a year. So I thought this was kind of interesting to look at how far we've come and kind of how quickly it's happened. Here you can see that it wasn't until the 50s that Planned Parenthood was developing a birth control pill. And in 1965, it was legalized, but only for married people, which to me seemed a little bit backwards because it seems kind of weird that they would legalize it for people that were married as opposed to the people that aren't married and probably need it more. And then in 68 is when the underground abortion network started. And that's what kind of led to Roe v. Wade. And then in 1972, birth control was legalized for anyone. So that's not that long ago, if you think about it. That's pretty recent. So Roe v. Wade is what we were talking about this week in the discussion post. And it was when the Supreme Court ruled that it was a woman's right to have an abortion under the 14th Amendment. And that's what I think causes a lot of controversy still today. Some of the controversies behind that are people think that life begins at conception. So when you're having an abortion, you're basically murdering a person. Then people think that you should just put the baby up for adoption. I would argue that the adoption system is not the best here in America, and it's not a sufficient enough resolution. They also thought that there were medical complications for the woman carrying the baby. People didn't want their own tax dollars paying for the abortion. There's also the argument of minors or young women who aren't financially stable enough to have and take care of a child. And then obviously like rape cases where the women would not want to have the baby if they were sexually assaulted or something along those lines. So this is then the breakdown of what Planned Parenthood is doing. So as you can see, the majority of what they're doing is the STD testing and treatment. 34% is contraception, like birth control pills. So it's a lot of like preventative measures. So as like the president mentioned in the video, only 3% of their services is the abortion. But as you can see, they do other things like cancer screening and other general women's health services. So just to show how much of an impact they're making on our healthcare system, they have more than 600 healthcare centers around the country, and they're serving almost 5 million people every year. And 1 in 5 women have visited a center once in their lifetime. So that's a lot of people. Most of their patients are receiving services to prevent unintended pregnancies. And they're doing 295,000 Pap tests and 320,000 breast exams a year. So they're providing a very wide range of medical assistance. So yeah, 4.2 million tests and treatments for sexually transmitted infections and more than 650,000 HIV tests. So here's how the funding breaks down. They receive most of their money from the government, over $500 million, over $300 million from non-government sources, $257 million from private donors, and $54.7 million in fees from services. But most of the funding is coming from Medicaid, and most of their patients are relying on Medicaid and other public healthcare services. So then I thought this was interesting. It kind of showed how like the funding is like broken down actually like at the centers. So here it shows like a person that has Medicaid that goes to the Planned Parenthood center for preventative care. And then it says that they get birth control, an STD test, and a Pap smear, and that they're not paying anything. And then Planned Parenthood basically takes that, whatever the charge was, sends it to Medicaid. Then Medicaid reimburses Planned Parenthood. And then the state Medicaid agency sends the bill to the federal government for their reimbursement. So it kind of shows the different stages that it's going through, and that a lot of the times it's Medicaid that's like the middleman between all of it. So if Planned Parenthood were to stop being funded, there would basically be no access to any of the centers. And as I said before, 1 in 5 people that have gone, that's like would be a large majority of the population that would then not have access to that. And it would actually cause a national healthcare disaster, just because there's so many people that are using them around the country right now. And lastly, this was in the news last week, that Mila Kunis said that she sets up a monthly donation so that Mike Pence gets a letter in the mail thanking him for donation, because she set it up in his name, because he's not the biggest fan of Planned Parenthood. So I thought that was an interesting current event to share. So yeah.
All right. Thank you. All right, so thoughts, comments, anyone? I read some of your discussions posts, and a lot of you, when you're talking about, the abortion part to it, it was, a lot of you said it depends on the situation. Okay, Jack, did you post yet?
No, I did not.
So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think that every woman has a right to it. I think it should be their decision on what they want. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know what else there is to say about it.
It's interesting. I mean, it is a very heated topic. It's funny that you brought up the Mila Kunis thing, because I just happened to read something about that yesterday, and it's funny how people, people are entitled to their opinion. A couple of you said, religious beliefs, but then where some people went off on it is, she went on and said, that's what she's been doing. Well, she's also a spokesperson for a liquor company. And it was interesting because then there were all these comments from people about how they've, been drinkers of that liquor for years, and now they don't believe with that, so they're going to stop drinking this until she's fired. So it's interesting how like a fallout can happen. It's very political. So it's interesting to hear everyone's thought process on it. So, yeah. Any other thoughts? What do you think Planned Parenthood could do to kind of get away from the political side? They do have funding, but, only 3% of what they do is abortion. Anyone? Ideas? These are very quiet tonight. Did the time change?
Yeah.
Yeah. At least it's warm there. I was talking to them before everyone got there. It's cold here. Makes me very tired.
It's supposed to be degrees tonight here.
It's supposed to what?
It's supposed to be 28 degrees here.
It's already 35 here. It's cold.
Freezing.
Yeah. So why do you think Planned Parenthood doesn't put maybe more into marketing where they can get that information out there that they're only 3% abortion? Do you think they don't care? They try to focus on what they're there for? What do you guys think? What would you do if you were the president of Planned Parenthood?
I feel like the money spent on marketing could be more useful somewhere else.
Okay.
That's what I would do. That's my opinion.
That's okay. That's a good one. Layla, what do you think?
I don't know. This is kind of a hard question. I feel like being a nonprofit organization, purely people, I just feel like marketing and putting things like ads and stuff out there just will kind of defeat the purpose of being nonprofit. Also, just because there's so much, the whole thing about is abortion. I feel like at this point we're too far gone believing that's the main goal of Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
It would be hard for people to to believe that or like change their views on it.
Yeah, so they just don't bother with it. I get that. Any other comments about Kim's topic? All right. Well, thank you, Kim. All right, so let's move on. Eliana, you ready? All right, go ahead and share your screen for us.
Okay. Wait, is it working?
Yep.
Okay. So, euthanasia is intentionally ending a life to relieve pain and suffering. And if it is committed with the aid of a physician, then it's considered physician-assisted suicide. And it's allowed in 7 states, including Washington, D.C. So it's allowed in Montana, Colorado, California, Oregon, Vermont, Washington, and Washington, D.C. And in all the states, there's requirements that are similar, except for Montana, it's by a court ruling. And then about 7 in 10 Americans say that physician-assisted suicide should be allowed, and support is increased by 20% from 2013 to 2015. So in most of the states, you have to be 18, and you have to have 6 or less months until your expected death. And you have to have 2 oral requests, at least 15 days apart, and 1 written request. So there's the first oral request, and at least 15 days later, the second one, and then a written request. And then there's reasons people say that it should not be allowed, is that the people deciding aren't always in a good state of mind. So they believe that terminally ill patients are not in the correct state of mind to make the decision, and that pain is controllable in other ways besides death, like pain medications, and that it makes people think that suicide's okay. So I have a video.
Physician-assisted suicide and euthanasia frequently asked questions. 1. If we put down animals when they are suffering and dying, why don't we treat human beings with the same level of compassion? The key to answering this question is to realize that civilized societies have always believed that we should treat human beings differently than we treat animals. What is required to respect human life and human dignity is not the same as what is required for animal life. Still, animals deserve respect, and it is wrong to inflict suffering on them. But in relation to relieving human suffering, thankfully, with 21st century medicine, we have highly effective forms of pain management which allow us to help people who are suffering without ending their lives as we typically do animals. People who are in favor of physician-assisted suicide believe that in certain situations, helping someone end their own lives actually respects their right to autonomy. They also see it as a form of mercy. What they often fail to acknowledge, however, is that people who desire assisted suicide are extremely vulnerable. People who are elderly, disabled, in pain, or have a terminal disease who want to die typically feel that they are a burden on others, that life has lost its meaning, or that all hope is gone. In short, they are often depressed, and the dangers of abusing them in their depression cannot be avoided once physician-assisted suicide becomes legal and acceptable. Furthermore, we risk sending the dangerous and irresponsible message that suicide is an appropriate response to suffering. Physician-assisted suicide is suicide, and we must treat it as such. So how do we treat suicidal people? We help them. We show them that life is still worth living. We love them and prove to them that they are not a burden to others. We help them manage.
Okay. So, and then another reason that some people say it's not, like it shouldn't be allowed, is that there's been an increase of deaths and the amount of prescriptions given to people since it was legalized in Oregon. And then reasons people say that it should be allowed is that life is no longer enjoyable for some people. And yeah, and then a loss of autonomy, which makes people feel like they don't have control over their life if they don't have the choice. And then also a loss of dignity, and there's a movement called Dying with Dignity that promotes physician-assisted suicide. And then I have more video.
This is the story of Amy. Amy
just got diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. Her doctors told her that she would die from this disease, but it will be slow and painful in the rest of the 6 months of her life. So Amy decides to get educated about her disease and reads about the progression that will happen to her. Amy finds out by the time the disease finally takes her, she will not be in control of her body anymore. She won't be able to feed herself. Let alone, she won't be able to wash herself. And to Amy, the thought she won't be able to take care of herself is worse than the thought of dying. She doesn't want to spend all of her money to prolong death by taking lots of medications just to stop the pain. So Amy has an idea. She will investigate what options she has. And she finds out that in a few places, there is something called Dying with Dignity. Dying with Dignity is a movement that promotes the ability to meet death on your own terms. And Dying with Dignity involves offering options to terminally ill patients like Amy, other than just waiting for the illness to kill them slowly. And one way to die with dignity is by physician-assisted suicide, also known as PASS. PASS is the voluntary termination of one's own life by administration of a lethal substance with the direct or indirect assistance of a physician. And Amy would rather have that option and to take this route so that she can feel the best that she can for the next 6 months, to do the things she wants to do, like shop, and to be with the people she cares about.
Okay, then these are with 96% of people say that there's a decreased ability to participate in activities that made life enjoyable. And then 92% say that there's a loss of autonomy, and 75% say that there's a loss of dignity. Yeah. So.
All right. So what do you guys think? If you were given 6 months to live, terminal illness, what do you guys choose?
I don't think you can really just like imagine that. And then
Yeah, I agree.
So if it came down to you can't bathe yourself, you can't feed yourself.
I'd probably see how much like pain I was in.
Yeah, because I mean, you know, you've seen people that, you know, were given 6 months to live, and it seems like they are fine, and, you know, it's hard to believe. Yeah. So yeah, it's a tough one. Do you think people should have that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you think more states should legalize it, or do you think just having a few? So I know in some cases you have to, I think in maybe Oregon, you have to be there for so many months before you can go through with it or start looking into that. Or do you think you should just be able to travel there and take care of it?
I think more states should legalize it.
I agree with that.
Jack's just like, yeah, what she said. Make her do the hard work. All right.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
There was a movie on this. That movie about the two people that fell in love, but then he was like,
Yes, what was it called?
it was like,
You and Me or something.
oh, Me Before You.
Me Before You, there it is.
Yeah.
It was really sad.
It was really sad. It's good up until the last part. So yeah, I feel like on her end, like you don't want to be selfish because it's someone you love, but they're in pain, and it is their life. So yeah, that's a tough one. Alrighty, so next week, Jack, you're up next week, right?
Yes, I am.
Yay! And then are most of you on break then? From like Friday on? Do you guys get a full week for Thanksgiving?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So jealous. All right, so that week you will have an assignment, but it's going to be a light week. We won't meet live, obviously, because of Thanksgiving. Some of you have some work for me that needs